He didn't just steal her life savings, he stole her soul, piece by painstaking piece, replacing her life's work, her passion, with worthless fakes, right under her nose while pretending to care. Imagine that, your own flesh and blood, systematically erasing you, while smiling to your face, day after day after day. It's the kind of betrayal that leaves scars deeper than any physical wound, the kind that makes you question everything, everyone. I'm Victoria, and you've tuned into a place where we talk about things people whisper about, stories of deep betrayal, families torn apart by greed, trust shattered into a million irreparable pieces, and even deeper, sometimes shocking, forms of justice, the kind that doesn't always come from a courtroom. Today's story, it's one that burrowed under my skin, stayed with me long after the recording stopped. It came from a client, let's call her Agnes, a woman who seemed quiet, unassuming. When you first meet her, you'd picture her knitting intricate patterns, maybe tending prize-winning roses in a sun-drenched garden. She spoke softly, moved deliberately. She was actually a retired head librarian for one of the city's most prestigious archives, sharp as a tack, truly brilliant, but gentle, or so everyone thought. That was the surface, the carefully constructed persona she presented to the world. No one guessed the steel underneath, the mind honed by decades of strategy, classification, information retrieval, hidden behind bifocals and a genuine love for dusty books, a mind that missed nothing, eventually. What happened to Agnes? It wasn't just theft, it wasn't just fraud, it was obliteration, an attempt to hollow her out from the inside, leaving nothing but a confused shell. It was psychological warfare, masked as loving care, orchestrated by the person she trusted most in the world, her nephew, Mark, and his calculating girlfriend, Chloe. Their cruelty was breathtaking, their meticulous planning, chilling, their greed, bottomless, but they underestimated Agnes, fundamentally, fatally. They poked the wrong bear, they mistook quiet dignity for weakness, they misinterpreted kindness as foolishness, they assumed age meant irrelevance, and the fury they unleashed, it wasn't loud or chaotic. Oh no, it was cold, calculating, and utterly devastating. The kind of fury that dismantles lives brick by brick. You absolutely need to hear how Agnes turned the tables, how she meticulously dismantled their lives with the same precision they used against her, using their own arrogance against them. So hit that subscribe button right now. Go on, click it. Trust me. You don't want to miss the conclusion to this. It's a masterclass in quiet vengeance. Now let me step back and let Agnes tell you, in her own words, what they did and what she did next. The transition might be a little jarring, because the emotion is raw, unfiltered. This is her voice, her pain, her cold, simmering rage, captured just weeks after the dust settled. Listen closely. My life before was ordered, peaceful, predictable some might say, but I found comfort in that predictability. My little house, filled with treasures, not jewels or gold, nothing like that. My treasures were different. They were books, rare books, first editions, signed copies, presentation copies from authors I deeply admired, each one a story, not just within its pages, but of how it came to me. The thrill of the hunt at auctions, the dusty discoveries in forgotten shops, the careful negotiations, my passion, my legacy, built over 60 years of careful searching, dedicated saving, meticulous care, my sanctuary, my quiet paper-filled world. The scent of old paper and leather binding, that was the smell of home, sunlight filtering through the curtains, catching the dust motes dancing around the shelves, each shelf organized just so, by author, by period, sometimes by personal significance. I knew where every single volume belonged. I could walk into that room in the dark and place my hand on any specific title. It was an extension of my own mind. Mark, my late sister's boy, my dear sister Helen, gone too soon. Mark was all I had left of her. He was always attentive, especially after Helen passed. I was his only real family left. His anchor, he sometimes said. He'd visit, bring groceries, fix little things around the house, a leaky faucet, a squeaky hinge, things I could have managed, but it seemed to give him purpose. He seemed, lost sometimes, drifting between jobs. trying to find his way. I felt for him, I really did. I remembered him as a bright little boy, full of questions. What happened? Life, I suppose, it wears people down. Chloe, his girlfriend, she arrived on the scene about 2 years ago. She was polished, always dressed perfectly, always saying the right things, complimenting my home, my garden, my books, especially the books, asking questions, showing such intense interest. Oh, Agnes, this binding is exquisite. Where did you ever find this one? Or so I thought. Looking back, the interest was always superficial, focused on rarity, on value, not on the content. Not on the history I loved to share. They started spending more time at my house, much more time. Mark lost his job. Again, said the market was tough, layoffs. He had a convincing story. Chloe was a freelance, something, graphic designer, she said, always seemed to be between projects, or waiting on client payments that never seemed to materialize. They hinted about money troubles. Subtly at first, a comment about rising rent, needing car repairs, unexpected bills. I helped where I could. Small loans at first, then larger ones, gifts for birthdays, holidays, just because. What else are aunts for? Especially when he was Helen's son. How could I refuse? Then Mark suggested he could help me manage my finances. Gently, persuasively. Aunt Agnes, you shouldn't have to worry about all this fiddly online stuff. It's so easy to get tripped up. I'm not clueless. I manage the budgets for entire library departments, but dealing with online banking portals, automatic payments, two-factor authentication, it did get confusing sometimes. Things changed so fast. He was so patient, sitting beside me, explaining things. Setting up accounts. Let me just link this here. It'll make paying the utilities automatic. He said it would give him purpose, helping his old auntie, taking care of me, like his mother would have wanted. He brought papers to sign, online forms to approve, always with a reassuring smile, always making it seem like he was doing me a huge favor, taking a burden off my shoulders, protecting me from scams. He said, the irony. Chloe would chime in, reinforcing it. Oh, Agnes, you deserve to relax, enjoy your retirement, let Mark handle the boring stuff, he's so good at it. Her voice, like warm honey, but with a sting I didn't recognize until much later. He also started talking about my books. His interest intensified. Aunt Agnes, he'd say, his eyes scanning the shelves, a little too eagerly. These must be worth a fortune. Are they insured properly? Do you have a detailed catalogue? What if there was a fire? Valid concerns. On the surface, he offered to help me create a digital inventory, take photos, document everything, said it was important for preservation, for insurance purposes, a modern necessity. Chloe would help, she was good with computers. Photography, she said, she had a good eye for detail. It felt helpful, responsible even, a task I'd been meaning to do myself, but kept putting off. They spent hours, days, then weeks, in my library, carefully handling the books, wearing cotton gloves they brought themselves, taking notes on condition, publication details, Chloe taking pictures from multiple angles, Mark asking detailed questions about provenance, where I acquired each one, any unique markings, about condition, any restoration work. I shared my stories, my knowledge, freely, proudly even, happy that someone in the family finally appreciated my collection, my life's work. It felt like validation, like my passion wasn't just a solitary eccentricity. They'd bring me tea, especially when they were working in the library. Chloe made this special herbal tea, a blend she mixed herself, said it helped with relaxation, helped me sleep. You seem stressed, Agnes, this will help calm your nerves. I did start feeling foggy sometimes, especially in the afternoons, after the tea, tired, more tired than usual, my memory not quite as sharp, little details seemed slippery, I chalked it up to age. Stress maybe, they were always there, fussing, reassuring me. Don't worry, Aunt Agnes, just rest, we'll take care of everything. Their voices, gentle, concerned, or so I believed. The first little alarm bell, faint, barely audible, like a tiny crack in a porcelain cup, was a book, a signed first edition of Virginia Woolf, to the lighthouse, my absolute prize, found after years of searching, signed not just with her name but with a short, personal inscription to a friend. That inscription was the heart of its value, its uniqueness. I picked it up one afternoon, wanting to reread a particular passage about the flickering lighthouse beam. Dust jacket felt wrong, too crisp, too glossy, the paper wasn't the right weight. The colour seemed off, and the signature under my desk lamp, it looked flatter than I remembered, less fluid, missing the characteristic pressure variation of her pen. I put it down, confused, a wave of dizziness washed over me. Maybe the light was playing tricks. Maybe the tea was stronger today, maybe I was just getting old, forgetful, like they sometimes gently hinted. "Are you sure you remember that correctly, Aunt Agnes?" Mark would ask, his brow furrowed with fake concern. Chloe found me looking at it later, standing there puzzled. "Isn't it beautiful, Agnes? Mark took such good care photographing that one. We had to handle it very carefully." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. There was a flicker, something watchful, guarded. Then small amounts of money, discrepancies in my bank statements, when I could focus enough to check them. Mark always had an explanation, smooth, plausible, a bill paid twice by mistake. He'd sought the refund, a bank error, he'd call them, an unexpected subscription fee he'd forgotten to mention, always plausible, always smoothly explained away. He'd show me spreadsheets, colourful charts he'd made. "See, Aunt Agnes, all accounted for. It's just the cost of living these days." But the numbers swam. The fog in my head made it hard to concentrate. The columns wouldn't stay still. I felt inadequate, ashamed of my confusion. Another book, weeks later, a first edition Hemingway, For Whom the Bell Tolls, a book I knew intimately, the feel of its specific paper stock, the slightly uneven trim of the pages, the binding, the particular way the spine creased. I picked it up, and the paper felt thick, wrong, too smooth, chemically treated somehow, the binding, too stiff, too perfect, like it had just come off a modern press. This wasn't just my imagination. This wasn't faulty memory. This wasn't age. Something was deeply, fundamentally, wrong. The cold dread started pooling in my stomach. I started looking closer, systematically, when they were out on their endless errands. I started comparing books I hadn't touched in a while to my memory, to old photos I had from years ago, insurance photos. Thank goodness for those. Subtle differences, at first glance, but glaring, once you knew what to look for. A slight change in cover colour, faded blue replaced with a brighter, less nuanced shade, a different texture to the end papers, cheaper paper, modern adhesive, a signature that lacked the unique pressure points I knew, the subtle hesitation in a stroke. These weren't my books, they were copies, good copies, frighteningly good, made by someone with skill, perhaps Chloe, but fakes nonetheless. Expensive, custom-made fakes, but utterly worthless to a true collector, and utterly heartbreaking to me. One by one, trembling, I started checking, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird, my hands shaking so much I could barely turn the pages. Not just the Wolf, not just the Hemingway, my Faulkner collection, gutted as I lay dying the sound and the fury, replaced my Fitzgerald's, Gatsby, Tender is the Night, replaced my rare poetry chapbooks, fragile pamphlets I had painstakingly preserved, gone, replaced with meticulous forgeries. Even some less valuable but personally cherished association copies, swapped out. The scale of it was dizzying, overwhelming. How, when, they were here all the time, helping, cataloguing, protecting. They must have been swapping them out, piece by piece, during those long cataloguing sessions, when they brought me tea, when I felt foggy, tired, distracted, under the guise of care, of preservation, stealing my treasures, my life's work, replacing them with cheap replicas, commissioned with my own money. The thought made me feel physically ill. And the money, I forced myself to focus, pushed through the lingering haze in my head, got my old bank statements from the dusty file cabinet, spread them out on the dining room table, compared them line by line with Mark's helpful spreadsheets. The discrepancies weren't small. Thousands, then tens of thousands, missing, siphoned off, transfers I didn't recognize, payments to companies I'd never heard of, large repeated payments to CV Designs. Chloe's supposedly struggling freelance business, suddenly flush, Mark's unexplained investments, trips they took, fancy dinners they mentioned, all funded by me. The betrayal, it wasn't a sudden blow, it was a slow poisoning, a creeping erosion, a meticulous campaign of destruction waged with smiles and cups of tea. They hadn't just stolen my money or my precious books. They had stolen my trust, my confidence, my peace of mind. They had used my love for my sister, my kindness, my desire for family connection, as weapons against me. They were trying to erase my legacy, replace it with a hollow imitation, just like the books. They were trying to erase *me. The fog wasn't just age, it couldn't be, that tea Chloe kept giving me, the constant suggestions about my memory, the gentle insistence that I was confused, getting frail, the gaslighting. It had been deliberate, systematic, cold-blooded, designed to make me doubt myself, to make me compliant, dependent, easy prey, someone who wouldn't notice the theft or wouldn't be believed if she did. I felt gutted, like my insides had been scooped out, leaving a gaping, echoing void. The library, my sanctuary, my place of peace, now felt like a crime scene, violated, contaminated. Every remaining authentic book felt tainted, vulnerable. Every surface held the ghost of their touch, their deceit, their false smiles. There was shock, disbelief, a deep aching sadness that settled in my bones. How could Mark, Helen's son, the little boy I remembered, do this? How could anyone be so cruel, so predatory, so utterly lacking in conscience? The world tilted on its axis, nothing felt real. My own home felt alien, threatening. Then, slowly, over hours, perhaps days, the sadness began to curdle, to harden into something else, something cold, sharp, crystalline, a rage unlike anything I had ever felt in my quiet, ordered life. It wasn't hot and explosive, it was icy, focused, a deep burning core of fury, ignited by the sheer, calculated cruelty of it all. The violation wasn't just theft, it was desecration. They had danced on the grave of my love for my sister. They thought I was a frail old woman, lost in her books, easily confused, easy to manipulate, easy to discard once they had bled me dry. They saw my quiet nature as weakness, my trust as stupidity, my love as leverage. They had no idea at all. My mind, the one they tried to fog and dismiss, started clearing, sharpening. The librarian, the archivist, the part of me that craved order, evidence, truth began to stir, sorting facts from lies, gathering data, and beneath that, something else, something long dormant. The chess player, my father taught me, insisted on it. Always think 3 moves ahead, Agnes. The strategist, the part of me that saw patterns, anticipated moves. Planned counterattacks. That part was wide awake now, and it was utterly, icily furious. The absolute turning point, the moment the ice in my veins solidified into unbreakable resolve, the moment that transformed grief and rage into a weapon, came unexpectedly. A few evenings later, I was supposed to be resting, feeling unwell after another one of Chloe's special cups of tea. They'd been particularly solicitous that day, fussing over me, insisting I rest. They thought I was asleep in my armchair, tucked under a blanket they'd placed over me. My eyes were closed, my breathing slow and even, but I was wide awake, every nerve ending tingling. They were in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner, their voices low but carrying in the quiet house. Mark was laughing, a smug, ugly sound that scraped against my raw nerves. She hasn't suspected a thing about the books, not a clue, buys the memory slips completely, thinks the wolf signature looks flat, hilarious. Chloe murmured something I couldn't catch, sounded like agreement. Then Mark again, louder this time, dripping with contempt. Honestly, the old bat's practically senile. It's almost too easy. Just a few more signatures on these investment papers. Maybe get that power of attorney sorted next week while she's confused, and we can finally unload this dusty old house and her precious fakes. Pretend they're real long enough to fool some other idiot collector online. We'll be on a beach in the Maldives before she even realizes her checkbook's empty. Sun, sand, and her retirement fund. Chloe laughed then, a sharp, greedy sound. Maldives, I like the sound of that, better than cataloguing dusty books. Senile, old bat. Fakes, unload the house. My home, power of attorney. While I'm confused, the casual cruelty, the utter contempt, the gleeful planning of my complete financial and personal ruin. It hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath, but instead of shattering me, it forged something new inside, hardened the resolve, the last vestiges of hurt, of sadness, of disbelief, vaporized in an instant, replaced by a chilling clarity. A white-hot determination that burned away the fog completely. They weren't just thieves, they weren't just betrayers, they were predators, vultures circling, waiting for me to falter, and I wasn't just a victim, I was prey that was about to bite back, hard, with teeth they never knew I had. They wanted to erase me. Fine, I would erase them, not from existence, that would be too simple, too quick. No, I would erase them from the life they thought they were stealing, the life they had built on my trust and my money. I would use their own greed, their own arrogance, their own assumptions about me. Against them, I would dismantle their plan, their lives, with the same meticulous precision they used to catalogue my books, to drain my accounts. They thought they were playing checkers. With a senile old woman, I was about to teach them chess, my game, my rules, on my board. Okay, just pausing Agnes's story for a moment, can you even imagine, lying there, helpless, pretending to be asleep, hearing that, the people you trusted, loved even, your own family, talking about you like that, like you're garbage, an obstacle, planning your complete destruction with such casual malice, such utter lack of humanity? It makes my blood run cold. Honestly, it makes me furious just recounting it. This is the kind of story that reminds you, resilience comes in unexpected forms, and sometimes justice requires getting your hands dirty, metaphorically speaking, or maybe, as you'll hear, not so metaphorically, it requires a plan, a cold, hard plan. If you're finding this story as compelling, as infuriating, as I do, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that notification bell too, because the way Agnes orchestrates her comeback, her revenge, it's a masterclass. You need to stick around for this. Seriously, don't go anywhere. Now, back to Agnes. She's just overheard the unthinkable, the final insult, and the game has irrevocably changed. Lying there, motionless under the blanket, pretending to sleep, my mind was racing, but it wasn't panicked. It was analytical, coldly furious, yes, but laser-focused. Strategy, that's what I needed, a multi-pronged strategy. Evidence, hard, undeniable proof, enough to stand up in court, yes, but more importantly, enough to utterly destroy their reputations, leverage, something to force their hand, to expose them publicly, and a plan. A precise, intricate plan, a plan they would never see coming, hatched by the senile old bat. First, evidence, documenting the forgeries, systematically, professionally, beyond any doubt. I couldn't do it alone. My own assessment wouldn't be enough. I needed an expert, someone whose credentials were unimpeachable, someone I trusted implicitly, someone who knew books even better than I did, if that was possible. Dr. Bernard Thorne, my old colleague from the Central Library's Rare Books department. We'd retired around the same time. He grumbled about boredom for 6 months, then promptly started a small, highly respected business. Rare book appraisals, authentication, provenance research. He was meticulous, incorruptible, sometimes curmudgeonly, but fiercely loyal. We hadn't spoken much in the past year or so. Mark and Chloe had subtly discouraged contact with old friends. They just tire you out, Aunt Agnes. You need to conserve your energy. Another layer of their isolation strategy, keeping me dependent, cutting off my support network. I waited until Mark and Chloe were out the next afternoon, one of their mysterious errands, probably spending my money. My hand trembled as I dialed Bernard's number. What if he didn't believe me? What if he thought I was getting confused? My voice shook slightly at first. Bernard Thorne, it's Agnes Dubois. There was a pause, then his familiar gruff voice. Agnes. Good heavens, woman, I thought you dropped off the face of the earth. How are you? Bernard, I said, keeping my voice low, steady. I need your help. Something terrible has happened with the books. He came over the next day, under the pretext of borrowing a rare gardening monograph he knew I owned. Mark and Chloe were home, unfortunately. Hovering, Chloe offered Bernard her special tea. He politely declined, thank heavens. Bernard played his part beautifully, chatting about roses, peering at my shelves with professional interest. He took one look at my face when they briefly left the room, saw the strain, the banked fury. Then when I discreetly pointed towards the wolf on a nearby table, his expression turned grim. Later, when I arranged for him to return while Mark and Chloe were out for a longer stretch, he examined it properly. Under a portable scope he brought, checked the paper density, the binding threads, the signature ink chemistry. "Agnes," he said quietly, his voice tight with suppressed anger, "this is a very good fake, disturbingly good, but it's unequivocally a fake. Where are the others?" We spent the next few weeks, secretly, meticulously, working whenever I could guarantee Mark and Chloe would be absent for several hours. Bernard brought specialized equipment, forensic lighting, high-resolution cameras, digital microscopes. He documented everything, every swapped book, every forged signature, every discrepancy in paper ink binding. The scale of the fraud was worse than I'd initially realized. Dozens upon dozens of my most valuable pieces. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in value. Stolen, replaced, my legacy, gutted. Bernard was horrified, his professional integrity insulted by the quality and audacity of the forgeries, and absolutely furious on my behalf. "We have to go to the police, Agnes. Right now this is grand larceny, fraud, elder abuse." "Not yet, Bernard," I told him, my voice steady now, the cold resolve burning bright and clear. "Police reports take time, investigations drag, they could disappear, they could destroy evidence, they could try to spin some story about my confusion. No, we need something faster, something more definitive. They humiliated me privately. They plan to ruin me publicly. Their downfall needs to be just as public, just as complete, just as humiliating." Bernard looked at me, really looked at me, saw the steel in my eyes, the librarian replaced by the strategist, the chess player emerging. He nodded slowly, a grim understanding dawning on his face. "All right, Agnes, all right, against my better judgment perhaps, but all right, what's the plan?" Next, the money trail. Mark was clever, hiding transfers. Using shell accounts Chloe likely helped set up with her design business front. Funneling money offshore perhaps. I needed someone tech-savvy, someone who could navigate the digital labyrinth he'd created using my accounts, someone who could retrieve deleted data, someone I could trust, absolutely. My grandniece, Maya, my other nephew's daughter, Helen's brother's child, we weren't close. Mark had subtly poisoned that relationship too over the years, painting me as the distant, critical, bookish great aunt, uninterested in the younger generation, another strand in his web of isolation. But I remembered Maya from occasional family gatherings years ago, bright, rebellious, fiercely intelligent, with a knack for computers even then. I'd heard she became a cybersecurity analyst, living across the country, California, I think. I reached out, hesitantly at first, sending an email, then calling. It felt awkward. I hadn't spoken to her in years. I explained the situation, carefully, factually, the betrayal by her cousin Mark, the theft, the gaslighting, the forgeries, the financial drain. Maya listened, silent at first. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Then, disbelief turned into cold anger that flared in her voice, anger at her cousin, anger at Chloe. Protective anger for me. Aunt Agnes, Uncle Mark did what? That absolute snake, and Chloe, unbelievable, give me everything you have, account numbers, passwords Mark set up for you, logins, anything, I'll dig, I'll find it, don't worry. I work in the dark web sometimes, Aunt Agnes. Mark's little spreadsheet tricks won't hide anything from me. Dig she did, working remotely, late at night after her own job. She bypassed Mark's clumsy attempts at digital security, uncovered the hidden transfers, the payments to Chloe's shell company, CV Designs, traced the money flow to luxury purchases, online gambling sites Mark frequented, the trail of my stolen savings, funding their lavish dinners, their weekend trips, their contemptible parasitic lives. Maya compiled everything meticulously. Bank records, server logs, IP addresses, deleted emails she recovered from my own computer's cache, incriminating messages between Mark and Chloe discussing their plans, mocking my confusion, a digital mountain of irrefutable proof, damning and detailed. Now the plan, the strategy began to crystallize. Mark and Chloe were arrogant, supremely so. They believed they were smarter than everyone, especially me, the senile old bat. Their greed was their primary motivator, their Achilles heel, and Mark's boasting, overheard in the kitchen, about fooling other idiot collectors online with the fakes. That gave me the final piece, the perfect idea. We would set a trap, using their own methods, their own greed, against them, a public trap, disguised as a golden opportunity for them. Bernard had extensive connections in the rare book world, auction houses, dealers, prominent collectors. He helped me contact a reputable online auction house, one known for its high-profile live-streamed appraisals and significant sales, a place Mark and Chloe would certainly know, and likely monitor. We concocted a story. Agnes Dubois, the reclusive elderly collector, was considering selling a recently rediscovered family heirloom, a truly unique item. Something undocumented, something that would attract serious attention and potentially serious money. We needed bait they couldn't resist. We fabricated documentation, plausible provenance connecting it to a distant literary ancestor, just enough detail to pique intense interest without being easily verifiable immediately. The bait, a supposedly unknown manuscript fragment, handwritten, hinted to be from a major transcendentalist author, Emerson perhaps, something Mark knew I didn't own, but something plausible enough given my known collecting interests. And something he knew would fetch an astronomical price if genuine, enough to make his eyes water with greed. We let slip rumors, carefully placed whispers by Bernard in the online collector forums and dealer circles that Mark and Chloe frequented, using anonymous accounts, hinting at this incredible find coming to light. Chloe, with her design skills, even unwittingly helped me. I asked her to help me set up a simple, elegant website, showcasing a few of my genuine remaining treasures. To establish my credibility before the big sale, I explained. She bought it completely, smiled condescendingly. She thought she was helping me set up my own potential humiliation or exploitation, perhaps planning to expose my senility later if the fragment proved fake, or leverage the site herself somehow, playing the part of the helpful, tech-savvy niece-in-law, while secretly planning to profit from my downfall. The irony was delicious. The auction house, fully briefed by Bernard and horrified by the story, agreed to play their part. They announced a special online event, treasures from the archives, live appraisals, featuring expert analysis of potential consignments, including the mysterious Agnes Dubois manuscript fragment. The buzz started almost immediately. Collectors were intrigued. Speculation ran wild online. And just as I predicted, Mark saw an opportunity, a huge one, not just the potential commission he likely planned to skim from my sale, but a chance to legitimize and offload one of the fakes he'd stolen from me, under the cover of this legitimate high-profile event, to establish its provenance through a live appraisal. He contacted the auction house himself, using a pseudonym. David Miller said he had a remarkable find he'd inherited, a signed first edition. We decided to use the Faulkner, the sound and the fury that he wanted appraised during the live stream. Hopping to piggyback on the attention my manuscript was generating, he sent photos Chloe had taken weeks ago, of the asterisk forgery from my library. The auction house contact, tipped off by Bernard, played along beautifully, expressing great interest, remarking on its apparent quality, inviting Mr. Miller to submit it for the same live stream event, offering him a prime spot, right after the Dubois fragment appraisal. Mark must have felt like he'd won the lottery. The stage was set. The players were in position, Mark and Chloe, sitting beside me in my own living room, watching the live stream on my large computer monitor. Chloe patted my hand periodically. "Isn't this exciting, Agnes? Your big moment. Are you nervous?" Her voice saccharine sweet, Mark fidgeting, tapping his foot, nervous energy radiating off him, unable to sit still, anticipating his own fraudulent discovery and the potential payday. They had absolutely no idea they were walking into a meticulously planned ambush, orchestrated by the senile old bat they despised and were actively robbing blind. The chessboard was arranged, the trap was sprung, all that remained was the checkmate. The live stream began, polished host, graphics, music, thousands watching online according to the counter. The host, a well-respected rare book expert named Julian, started with some minor items, building anticipation. Then, my manuscript fragment, Bernard, appearing via video link as my official representative, spoke eloquently about its fabricated history, its supposed discovery in an old family trunk. The expert Jonathan Finch examined it remotely via high-definition cameras Bernard controlled, praised its condition, acknowledged its potential significance. Further research is definitely warranted, intriguing, building the hype, just as planned. Then, Julian the host turned smoothly to the next item, and now, an exciting submission that came in just recently, from a Mr. David Miller, a purported signed first edition of William Faulkner's masterpiece, The Sound and the Fury. Mark sat up straighter, a smug little smile playing on his lips. He subtly nudged Chloe, a shared look of triumph passed between them. The camera zoomed in on the book, his asterisk submission, my asterisk stolen forgery, held carefully by an assistant at the auction house studio. The expert, Jonathan Finch, began his examination. He paused, frowned slightly, picked up a magnifying glass, consulted something on his own screen, compared the signature to known authentic Faulkner examples displayed alongside it, checked the binding details, the paper stock under magnification. The silence stretched. Julian asked, cheerfully oblivious, "Well, Jonathan, what do we think? Another treasure for the auction block?" Jonathan Finch looked directly into the camera, his expression serious, grave, professional disappointment masking cold anger. "I'm afraid not, Julian. While this is an incredibly skillful reproduction, clearly designed to deceive, I've encountered this particular forger's work before. It is unequivocally a forgery." A collective gasp seemed to echo through the online chat visible on the side of the screen. Mark's face went white, chalk white. His smug smile vanished, replaced by disbelief, then dawning horror. Chloe froze, her hand hovering over mine, snatching it back as if burned. Jonathan continued, calmly, professionally, pointing out the inconsistencies, the subtle errors in the formation of certain letters in the signature, the modern chemical signature in the paper analysis results he just received, the incorrect binding technique for the period. This is part of a series of sophisticated forgeries we've become aware of recently, often targeting vulnerable or elderly collectors. It's a despicable practice. Then, as planned, Bernard reappeared on screen, his face like thunder, no longer the polite representative, but a wrathful guardian, and I can tell you exactly where Mr. David Miller acquired this forgery. He looked directly at the camera, but his words felt aimed straight through the screen, straight at Mark, sitting frozen beside me. He stole it, along with dozens of other priceless, irreplaceable books, systematically replacing them with these fakes. From the collection of the very woman whose legitimate potential treasure we just discussed, Ms. Agnes Dubois, his own aunt. Bernard held up printouts to the camera, crystal-clear photos of the fakes Bernard had documented in my library, side-by-side comparisons with images of my original books taken from old insurance records. The evidence was stark, undeniable. He didn't just steal books. This man, whose real name is Mark Peterson, Agnes's own nephew, along with his accomplice Chloe Vance. Bernard pointed chillingly towards the camera, seemingly towards where we were sitting, just off screen, systematically defrauded his aunt of her life savings. embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars, drugged her repeatedly to facilitate their crimes, isolated her from friends, and planned to dispose of her assets after having her declared legally incompetent. Mark leaped up, knocking his chair over, shouting incoherently, "Lies, that's slander he can't prove." Chloe was trying to pull him back, her face a mask of sheer panic, whispering frantically, "Mark, shut up, shut up." But it didn't stop. On screen, another window popped up, Maya, calm, professional, presenting remotely from her office. "Good evening, my name is Maya Chen, I'm a cybersecurity analyst, and Ms. Agnes Dubois' grandniece. Over the past weeks, at Ms. Dubois' request, I have uncovered extensive digital evidence, documenting financial fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and conspiracy committed by Mark Peterson and Chloe Vance against Agnes Dubois." Screenshots flashed up in rapid succession, bank transfers from my accounts to CV Designs, transfers to offshore gambling sites linked to Mark's known aliases, incriminating emails and chat logs between Mark and Chloe recovered from supposedly wiped hard drives, discussing the forgeries, the drugging, the plan for the power of attorney, IP logs tracing Mark's attempts to sell other fakes online using various pseudonyms, the meticulous documentation of their crimes. Laid bare for the thousands watching the live stream, the auction house chat exploded into a frenzy of outrage and condemnation. Mark lunged towards my computer, trying to slam the laptop shut, trying to stop the transmission, but it was too late. The feed was being mirrored, recorded, archived by the auction house and secretly by Maya. Bernard, anticipating this, had positioned himself perfectly during his earlier visit. He stood blocking Mark's path, no longer just a quiet book expert, but a furious, immovable protector, tall and imposing when truly angry. The police, alerted by Maya just moments before Bernard's reveal, timed perfectly, were already on their way, sirens growing louder, faintly audible now through the closed windows, then louder, stopping right outside. Mark and Chloe were trapped, exposed, humiliated, ruined, live in front of the entire rare book world, colleagues, potential employers, neighbors who might be watching, and anyone else who happened to tune into the treasures from the archives streamed that evening. Their digital and social annihilation was complete, before the legal one even began. The fallout was immediate, spectacular, and brutal. Mark and Chloe were arrested, right there in my living room. The cameras, redirected by a savvy auction house producer, kept rolling for a few crucial moments, capturing their shocked, then terrified, then desperately pleading faces as the officers led them away in handcuffs. It wasn't pretty, but it was, undeniably, just the final move in the game. Checkmate. The story exploded. Online news sites, collector forums went into meltdown. Even local and some national news picked it up. The librarian's revenge, the rare book heist gone wrong, the tea and treachery plot. The focus wasn't just on the crime, but on the meticulous, cold-blooded, technologically savvy way they were exposed, by the very woman they thought they'd broken, the senile old bat. Legally, it was airtight, the physical evidence Bernard gathered, the digital evidence Maya unearthed, the testimonies, the live stream recording itself. It was overwhelming. Forgery, grand larceny, fraud, embezzlement, elder abuse, even charges related to the drugging supported by trace elements Bernard had discreetly collected from used teacups. They faced years in prison, their reputations obliterated instantly, their names forever synonymous with betrayal and greed in the circles they once hoped to impress or exploit. They lost everything. Any remaining assets were frozen to provide restitution. Their future, gone, evaporated in that 1-hour live stream. Chloe predictably turned on Mark immediately, trying to paint herself as a victim, coerced, but Maya's recovered messages showed her gleeful complicity. The evidence implicated them both, irrevocably, equally. For me, as the flashing lights faded, as the house fell silent again, there was a strange calm, a vast emptiness. The icy fury had done its work, achieved its objective. Now it receded, leaving stillness, vindication, yes, a profound sense of justice delivered, but also a deep soul-aching weariness, The cost had been high, trust, family connection, innocence, all shattered. But slowly, very slowly, things began to mend. Bernard helped me navigate the complex legalities, the insurance claims. He became a regular visitor, not just for books but for tea and conversation. We started the painstaking process of trying to track down my real books, working with dealers, law enforcement, auction houses. Some were recovered from pawn shops or online resellers Mark had used before the big trap. Others, my wolf included, were lost forever, sold quickly through less scrupulous channels. That pain remains, a dull ache. Maya stayed in touch, visited from California, helped me secure my finances, my digital life, taught me about cybersecurity. We started building a real relationship, hesitant at first, hampered by the years of Mark's subtle interference, but growing, based on mutual respect, shared resilience, and a shared, slightly fierce sense of justice served. She calls me every Sunday now. The library felt different now, lighter somehow, cleaner, the ghosts of betrayal banished by the harsh light of exposure. I began rebuilding, slowly, selectively, not just the collection, finding new treasures, new stories, but my sense of self, my trust in my own judgment, my passion for books returned, tempered with hard-won wisdom, necessary caution, but fundamentally undiminished. The sanctuary is mine again. I started giving talks, small ones at first, at local library branches, then larger ones, at book fairs, collector groups, senior centers, even fraud prevention seminars about rare books. Yes, my first love, but also about recognizing the subtle signs of manipulation, financial fraud, gaslighting, about protecting oneself, about the importance of vigilance, community, staying connected, even with those closest to you, especially with those closest. Sharing my story, not as a victim recounting trauma, but as a survivor, a strategist, a warning. It wasn't the peaceful, entirely quiet retirement I'd envisioned all those years ago, stacking shelves and reading quietly, but there was a new purpose, unexpected, a strength I hadn't known I possessed, until I was pushed to the absolute edge, until everything I valued was threatened. They tried to erase me, they tried to render me invisible, confused, powerless. Instead, they revealed a part of me that had been dormant, waiting. The quiet librarian had found her voice, had roared, and their world, the one they tried to steal, had trembled, then collapsed. Justice wasn't just served on a platter, it was designed, engineered, and executed with strategic, devastating precision, and I, finally, began to find peace, not in silence, but in strength, in resilience, in knowing I fought back, and won. Wow, Agnes's story, the sheer audacity of the crime, but more so, the calculated brilliance of her response, the methodical way she turned their own greed and arrogance into the instruments of their public destruction. It's chilling, absolutely chilling, but also deeply satisfying, isn't it? That quiet, righteous fury simmering beneath her calm demeanor. She didn't just get some of her money back, or expose their crimes in a dry police report. She reclaimed her identity, her agency, her legacy, on her own terms, in the most public way imaginable, using the very intellect they tried to dismiss and undermine. The chess player didn't just win, she checkmated them, decisively, brutally, in front of the world. It raises questions, though, doesn't it? Difficult questions. When does righteous fury tip into calculated revenge? Was the public humiliation, the live-streamed destruction of their lives, truly necessary? Or was it the only way to ensure true justice? To strip away their masks and make sure they could never harm anyone else? To cauterize the wound they inflicted? Agnes found her peace, her strength, her voice, but the path she took was undeniably harsh, forged in the crucible of incredible pain and intimate betrayal. What do you think? Was Agnes's response justified, proportionate, necessary, or did the strategist go too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I really do read every single one. Your perspectives always add so much depth. And if stories like Agnes's resonate with you, stories of resilience against the odds, of unexpected strength bubbling up from the depths, of justice found in the most difficult and complex circumstances. Make sure you subscribe and click that notification bell. We share stories like this every week. True stories, powerful stories, stories you won't easily forget. Thanks for listening. I'm Victoria, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, stay vigilant.